Hello, welcome back to my channel. I wanted to give you a quick little update on all the progress that I was able to make on my prosthetic hand this last week. A lot of this week's progress was made possible thanks to all the great tools that Creality has sent me over the past year. This week, I was able to not only design and fabricate the forearm cuff, but I was also able to connect the gimbal and Gaffney assemblies to the sockets. The whole process started by scanning my forearm with a CR ferret scanner, and after a quick edit in Mesh Mixer, I printed out the rough form on my forearm in ABS using the K1 printer that Creality recently sent me. The print was pretty close, but as to be expected, it needed a little bit of refinement. You see, when I scanned my forearm, I was using a compression sock to simulate the shape of my forearm as though it was in a cuff. And in order for it to have the right feel, it needed to be just a little tighter in a couple places. In order to speed up the iteration process, I decided to use the print as a form to make a plaster buck. I glued the two halves together and taped up the wrist end so that I could fill the form with plaster. Once the plaster hardened, I peeled the print off the buck and began refining the shape closer to that of my forearm in a more compressed state. The next day, I sealed up the plaster with some white glue to act as a release for the fiberglass resin. I then mixed up 6 ounces of resin and prepped 4 toddler socks for the layup. I ended up using 12 drops of catalyst per ounce, and at 80 degrees, it might have been just a touch too much. Everything kicked off just fine. But by the time everything was laid up, it was just starting to gel, and I ended up leaving just a little bit in the bottom of the cup. After everything hardened, I made a single cut down the road to get the fiberglass to release from the plaster. I still ended up needing to use the hammer to break the plaster out. Usually, I'm able to get the plaster to release, but this time it was just too stuck and didn't want to come out. What followed next was the tedious process of going back and forth between fitting the cuff and refining its shape to something that's comfortable to wear for an extended period of time. Once that was accomplished, I drilled and tapped the holes for the gimbal 2 bracket and mounted it to the cuff. From there, I started to lay out exactly where and how the cuff assembly is going to be attached to the socket. I ended up needing to reprofile the wrist side of the socket so that the center of the Gaffney plate was closer to the anatomical point of rotation of my wrist. I got super close with the die grinder and got to the exact position using the double eccentrics on the Gaffney plate. I know that I have everything in the correct place because I'm able to go from flexion to extension without either one of the sockets moving on my residual limb. Next step in this build is to put my fingers back together and mount the winder onto the back of the hand. Now you may ask yourself, wait a minute, I thought you already had the fingers all together. Well, I did, but I decided to take them apart so that I could use the Falcon 2 laser that Creality recently sent me to engrave a pinstripe pattern onto the stainless steel parts that JLC PCB printed out for me. The process is going to require a fixture plate to hold the stainless steel parts so that I can reliably and repeatedly index them relative to the laser's home position. Think of it as using a G54 offset to the machine's absolute 00. The cool thing is, once everything's set up and the artwork is adjusted for the fixture, I should be able to just grab the fixture plate and reproduce the process if I ever need to redo the engraving or decide to change the pattern in the future. So I start out with CAD, taking the models of the metacarpal base and the medial, positioning them a little less than halfway into a solid rectangle, half an inch thick, and use the subtract tool to leave me with a pocket that I should be able to drop these components into and position them for the laser. The print took a couple hours on the K1, and it was pretty close, but I did end up needing to open up the pockets just a little bit so that I could easily drop the components in place. The next step in this process is doing a feeds and speeds test using the automatic test grid function in Lightburn. Once I come up with the feed and speeds for this job, I index the jig plate and push go. I'm still figuring out the exact look that I'm going for, but this is the step-by-step process that you'll need to go through if you're going to use the Creality Falcon 2 or really any laser in a production capacity to part mark parts. On another note, I also laser engraved a couple sample plates of the retro blueprints of my finger components. I haven't decided if I'm going to go with the laser ablation or go with the colored engraving on some stainless. It looks pretty good either way. I just need to decide if I want the look of the negative or the positive. That's about all I have for this video. Please remember to like, subscribe, share my videos. And if you have time, leave a comment in the comment section to help me with the algorithm. Thanks for watching.
Ooh, she is quick. That is some spicy tofu.